With apologies to the Beatles, it was 40 years ago today, MTV entered into the pop culture fray. Up next, we celebrate the first year where they actually played music with a look at their first day, including exclusive interviews. Next on Professor of Rock, brought to you by Zenni Eyewear. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you love music history, rock and pop history, make sure that you subscribe below right now to get some of the most unique stories of the classics. And if you click up here, you can see our brand new merch. Also, don't forget to check out our special content on Patreon. The link is below. As I said, it was 40 years ago today that MTV entered into the public consciousness. Of course, music television no longer exists, but for about 15 years or so, MTV was at the forefront of music culture, and truly, they influenced every generation. Over the next month, we're going to be celebrating the best parts of those years where they actually played music by counting down the greatest videos and the greatest moments. I mean, we all have our favorite MTV moments. When I was growing up in a small town in Idaho, we didn't get MTV until the mid-'80s. But my cousin had it early on, so I spent as much time as I could over at his house to get my fix.
MTV! I want my MTV!
I want my MTV.
I mean, I was just glued to his television. I couldn't believe that there was actually a 24/7 channel dedicated to music. It was heaven. I was absolutely enthralled. Pretty much my entire existence at that point was influenced by the music video and the artists that I saw on that exalted musical channel. Even though MTV doesn't exist anymore, I feel like there are many great individuals and channels out there that are keeping that musical spirit alive right here on YouTube. The first day MTV was pretty incredible. Everybody knows the first video that was played on MTV. But most don't know the 5 that were played after that. They were, in order, You Better Run by Pat Benatar, She Won't Dance With Me, Rod Stewart, You Better You Bet by The Who, Little Susie's on the Up by PhD, and We Don't Talk Anymore by Cliff Richard. Pretty much, if your band had a decent music video in 1981, you could probably get it played on MTV. They needed videos at that point. Up next, we have the story behind the very first song and video played on MTV, Video Killed the Radio Star, by co-writer and co-founder of the Buggles, Jeff Downs. We actually had a feature on this song before, but we've added more footage, we've re-edited it, specifically to celebrate MTV's 40th. Again, we'll have more specials on MTV in the coming weeks. Here is the video that started the revolution that was televised. Well, the crowning jewel by you and Trevor as the Buggles, of course, the iconic Video Killed the Radio Star. One of those songs that comes around once in a lifetime that has had really a revolutionary impact in so many ways. One of the songs that ushered in the new wave era of the 80s, especially for the popularization of new wave, like with innovative music for radio to play. Very different than what you were hearing on the radio at the time. And the song was first recorded by your Buggles bandmate, co-writer Bruce Woolley. He fronted the group, Bruce Woolley and the Camera Club. And notably, a young Thomas Dolby was the keyboardist for that. Bruce had the riff for the chorus, and you and Trevor worked with Bruce on crafting the song from that riff.
You know, I think Bruce pretty much had, you know, the verses, and Trevor had an idea for the chorus, and then they pulled me in, and I started to do all the intro and the arrangement and the middle section. So it was very much, you know, it was kind of a three-way contribution. But I think that it was there was something about the song that we knew it was something a little bit special. And I think that our version was really had the spirit of the song in that it was a production as much as it was a song, you know. And I think that, you know, we wanted to make it as overtly commercial as possible. With all the little hooks that came in, all the little arrangement motifs and that kind of thing. You know, opera singers in the background, and you know, these electric timpani and all that kind of stuff. So it was very much when we started recording it properly, we were very, very conscious that we had a pretty good demo of it, which got us a deal with Island Records. But I think that when it came to actually making the original recording was a real challenge, because, you know, when you've made a really good demo of something and then you have to go back to the drawing board, which we did, it was quite a significant challenge to us.
The demo had Tina Charles doing the vocals on it. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. Tina helped us pay for the demo, so she did the O bits and the video killed the radio star, and this kind of mock American accent, like a sort of Barbie doll kind of voice. So, you know, by that time we'd gone off and we were doing our own thing, and I think that we really wanted to try and recapture that, and that was pretty hard. We ended up with a girl called Rachel Fury, who went off and worked as a backing singer with Pink Floyd. And she was only very young at the time. I think she was probably about 18 or 19. But she had exactly the right sound. You know, she had that sort of quasi American sound for Video Killed the Radio Star.
You were the first one.
And the O.O's, but the rest of it was a woman that I did a lot of sessions with called Linda Allen, and she did all the operatic bits and You Are a Radio Star, that kind of thing. So there were only really two females on that whole recording. And so, yeah, I mean, we pulled in people that we worked with on various things. I think, you know, certain people will remember that Had Simon was doing some programming for us. So he was sort of involved on the programming side. We'd worked with him previously in a kind of offshoot or pre-Buggles band that we put together called Chromium. And that featured Linda Allen on vocals. It featured Hans did some programming for that as well. And it was obviously Trevor and myself. We wrote a lot of the songs on that. So it was kind of that Chromium thing really morphed into the Buggles. That
vocal, I remember as a kid hearing that song and the O part.
What did you tell them?
How did you guys come up with that? Just a brilliant vocal there, and it just so catchy, and it's one of those things that pulls you in. About
it was just a kind of just an aside, you know. I think that we did quite a lot of that sort of stuff with the Buggles. You know, we didn't want to do anything too conventional. Came up with the idea of putting the lead vocal through a Vox AC30, which gave it that radio sound. So a lot of the thing about the Buggles was it was a very experimental thing. We were just literally going from studio to studio, trying all kinds of different things out. And so I think in many respects we were pretty groundbreaking and quite, you know, pioneers in that style of making records. Is that we were, you know, I think when I spoke to Trevor about it, we said, you know, we like gimmicks. We're all about gimmicks. Just give me more, you know.
Trevor's girlfriend at the time, Jill Sinclair, and your girlfriend were instrumental in getting the Buggles a potential record deal. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, Jill had her own recording studio at the time called Saab Studios. Trevor had started to go out with her at that point. she had a small production company, and she offered us a deal, which was like, nothing deal kind of thing. And my girlfriend at the time was working for Island Music Publishing, and we'd already been turned down by Island and every other record company in London at the time. And she took the recording in, or cassette as it was then, and played it to a boss who really liked it, and he sent it over to the publishing company in Los Angeles, a guy called Lionel Conway, Island Music Publishing. And as he was playing it, the head of Island Records, Chris Blackwell, heard it and said, this is incredible, I want to sign this. So he sent a message back to London to sign Trevor and myself, both as producers, as writers and artists. So we kind of got all, overnight, we were offered, I think you could say we were offered all three things in what was at the time was a very significantly large deal.
Well, Video Killed the Radio Star, I mean, it's just prophetic in so many ways, very innovative for its time, sonically and lyrically, as you've said. The theme of the song, was, to me, centered around the emergence of computer technology and incorporating in the art of creating music as well as the media arts. And when I was a kid, I would hear a song and I would want to know all the makings of it. Who wrote it, who produced it, how it was inspired. And I read over time that Trevor said something to the effect that it was a little bit inspired by Kraftwerk, and then also this J.G. Ballard short story, The Sound Sweep. Tell me a little bit about that, what you remember.
Yeah, Trevor was very strong with the lyrics. I think that was his main department, really. He was inspired by a lot of science fiction writers, like J.G. Ballard, for instance. And I think Video Killed the Radio Star was loosely based on, as you point out, on a short story called The Sound Sweep by J.G. Ballard, where this little kid goes around recording studios, hoovering up sound. That kind of stuck with Trevor, and I think that was one of the ideas behind the line. And now we meet in an abandoned studio, and the playback used to go. So that was one of the lines that inspired him. There was the other thing about, which was really quite ahead of its time when the line comes in. They took the credit for your second symphony rewritten by machine, the new technology.
They took the credit for your second symphony.
That's sort of what happened in a way. Now you've got machines writing music, or certainly creating a lot of stuff in music. So it was very ahead of its time, I think, in that way.
Also, like the inevitable demise of the faceless radio DJ in favor of a visual personality, in essence, kind of setting the stage for the coming of MTV. And before we get into that, I want to cover that for a moment, but I want to ask you about what the instruments that you used. As I understand, you used a Selena, Mini Moog, and Prophet 5 to create the overdubbed orchestral parts. Tell me about that.
Well, I was particularly interested in creating, orchestral sounding music from synthesizers. Mm-hmm. And the Selena string machine was very, used to overdub it a lot to create this idea of multiple strings. It didn't sound real, but it kind of gave the impression of a very, almost like a pop orchestra. And so, like oboes and French horns, I used to get those kind of sounds out of Mini Moogs. So I was very conscious of the orchestral side of it, the orchestral instruments and timpani and big cymbals and all that kind of thing. Because at that time, of course, we didn't have the samplers. It was all pre-sample. So sampler wouldn't really come out until the beginning of the 80s. So we were using a lot of stuff, that was was a simulation, I suppose. But there's still the basic parts are still there. The piano's still there. The Fender Rhodes, the organ, clavinet. The more early kind of acoustic instruments. It still played a part in all of that, but we used to doctor them up. So, for instance, the piano on Video Code and Radio Star, even though it's a really nice piano, it's a Steinway Grand, is going through a kind of processor to make it sound almost like the old movies, you know, which is a chorus unit. We did a lot of things like that because we didn't want to have conventional sounding stuff. You know, we wanted to go for something much more edgy, and I think that certainly that was really our approach throughout, is that we were trying to challenge the technology and see what we came up with.
And the part that made it so different than anything else that you'd hear on the radio, the instrumental parts in the middle break where it's like dun 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 cha-cha. Whenever you're listening to it, you can't help but if you're driving, hit the steering wheel on that part. But then the part at the end where you think the song is over and it comes back in with the oh, oh, oh. Those parts made it so different than anything else that was on the radio.
Well, yeah, because I think we had our own thing. We used to call it a Polythene Symphonia, which was this sort of plastic orchestra. An idea was the Polythene Symphonia. And it was made up with all sorts of things like polymoogs and Selena string ensembles and mini moogs and prophets. So, you know, we were literally using virtually everything that was around at that time to create this sort of phony orchestra. I think, you know, that was pretty much my role in the whole thing was providing that side of it. That you know, we took it to even more extremes. I think on the Age of Plastic album, where we had started introducing vocoders and you know, a lot of different elements that we tried to get as much out of the technology as we possibly could.
And of course, Trevor Horn's vocals, very different. But Radio Star was the first, of course, it's been said a million times. And how many trivia questions has that been the answer to? The first video ever played on MTV?
Yeah. It's I think it's on Trivial Pursuit, actually, as a bona fide question.
For sure. Well, of course, their big unveiling in '81. Let's talk about the video, because when that was produced, I mean, MTV was not known at the time that was even going to happen. And it's very much, in a lot of ways, as I've read about the history of MTV, it was kind of a happy accident that everything came together with that. They only had really 12 music videos to start with. Tell me about the music video, what you remember, and that new technology that was beginning to get.
Well, it was something we did in a day. You know, I think that at the time when video was starting to take off, we were doing a lot of TV stuff around Europe, the music shows and that kind of thing. And some of the guys would get a bit creative, you know, and they'd show different pictures here, there, and everywhere. But no, we actually did the video before the song came out, and it was done in a day with the director Russell Mulcahy, who went on to do a lot of stuff with Duran Duran, Elton John, and I think he even directed Highlander. So he was an Australian guy, very experimental, a bit like us. And so we shot this video in a day, and he wanted to make it as kind of off the wall as the song was, or our production was in many ways. So it kind of lent itself to that sort of wacky production.
Well, of course, you're in the video, and Trevor and the ladies, and very futuristic, and it just was prophetic in so many different ways of what was going on in the era at the moment. The really big sweeping change that was coming in with New Wave.
Yeah, I think it was technology was starting to play a very significant part of music. I think that, you know, up until that time it had been fairly not generic, but certainly acoustic music, conventional instruments like electric guitars and Hammond organs and acoustic pianos and Fender Rhodes, that sort of stuff. I think that we were probably pretty futuristic in terms of taking it into a whole new genre of what people could, use to make pop records. And so I think that we were pretty much pioneers in that regard, certainly. I was going to say that of course, the MTV baptism was a couple of years after we'd actually released Video Killed the Radio Star. So it really did preempt that generation by quite a few years.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll.
Did you know, I've always been curious, did you know that was going to be the first video played?
We'll be doing for TV what FM did for radio. And let's get into it right now at MTV.
No, they never told us. I think it was just something that they picked up on. Because, of course, it hadn't been a hit in America. I think it stalled around number 40 or something.
Yeah, it was number 40.
Chart.
The most famous number 40 hit ever, I think.
Yeah, and so I think that, somehow it must have got buried into the psyche of the people that put MTV together initially that, they needed a launching song. And that was one they pulled out, even though it was not particularly well known to the American market at that time.
Well, there's a part of the song that really resonates, has always resonated with me, and it is the notion, because of the modern practice of making synthetic, computerized music, that kids of new generations won't really appreciate the great musicianship and artistry of the older recordings, especially those epic albums of the 60s and 70s. As one of the creators and an integral part of arranging the instrumentation of the song, you've stated, as you said, it was very complicated. And I think it's interesting when I talk to people that you couldn't just hit a button like today, where if you want a sample, you've got millions of things out there that you can just hit and you can get the exact sound. But you guys were doing things that were very experimental, that kind of thing. And kind of before we move on to the next song, what was the biggest challenge as you were recording this song?
I think it was to capture the right takes. I mean, if you listen to the backing track, which is done live, which is bass, drums, and piano, it's astonishing at how tight and precise it is, because we just kept going for another take, and take after take after take, until we felt we had a complete recording of that backing track. And I think that took us a few days. So we literally probably played that hundreds of times, because we didn't, at those stages you didn't really have the facility for editing multi-tracks. You had to get it all in one pass. And so things like a piano, you couldn't just splice it with another piano, because now you can do that on Pro Tools easy peasy, but you couldn't do it then. So we were restricted by some of the technology at the time, certainly multi-track recording. The fact that the tapes were, we spent so much time on that one song that, the tapes were starting to get really thin. The oxide was starting to come off, so we'd have lost quality. So it wasn't just a case of getting the music right, we had to get the technology right as well. So I think those were the two big challenges we faced, making that record and subsequently the album.
It was a huge international smash in 1979. I mean, number one in Australia, Austria, France, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, and the UK. I mean, that's incredible. Like you said, it hit number 40 in America. I almost wonder if like radio DJ and programmers in America were turned off by the subject matter, and that's why the song wasn't bigger in the States. Maybe ego played into that a little bit.
Well, it may have been something to do with that. I mean, I think they were quite skeptical about playing it, because, I think they thought maybe our jobs are on the line here.
Yeah.
But it was more to do, I think the sentiment of the song, you could go back to when the talkies took over from the silent films. You know, it was the same, it was a similar kind of move there, that we envisaged this guy in the 50s with the radio voice, and, you know, he sounded great on the radio, but when television came about, you know, you put the guy on television, it didn't work, you know, because, and it was, in many ways, that's what the whole idea of the Yoko radio song was, that the technology was moving along and would change people's perception of a person or a fashion or anything, simply because, you know, once it had moved on, people were left behind.
And to be involved in such a big pop culture moment like that, first video on MTV, and a song that 40 plus years later now is still played all the time as part of pop culture. It was just heavily sampled in Check It Out, Nicki Minaj and Will I Am, and what is your take on it so many years later to be a part of that?
I'm still very proud of it. You know, I think that I still get asked to play it and do a little orchestral version of it on a piano or something like that. And it's something that, you know, it's going to stay with me for the rest of my life, you know. So it's, as I say, I'm pretty proud of it. I think that, you know, I remember how hard we worked on it, and we got the rewards from it. And of course, it set both Trevor and myself on careers, not together eventually, but, you know, it sparked us off to do something different.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Video may have killed the radio star, but let's be honest, streaming killed it all. Just kidding. Leave us a comment about your favorite memories from the first decade of MTV. Now, tell us your favorite videos and about the Buggles' pioneering song and their video. Let us know in the comments. Now, if you dig our content, our videos, make sure to subscribe below so you never miss out. Daily, we come at you daily. Make sure to look us up on Patreon. Look at our merch as well, and help us keep the music alive. Very important. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth.